All right, so good morning, everyone, and thanks for joining our webinar on Cognigy.AI 3.0. Today's a launch day. Everyone's very excited. We've been working for several months, very hard, long days, long nights to get this release out the door. And finally, here we are, and we're very excited to show you what we have built here. So let's start. First, we are now rebranding Cognigy.AI as the conversational AI platform. The whole platform thought is very important to us because we really want you to see Cognigy as a platform that you can build upon. We're giving you all the tools necessary that you need to build conversational AIs. We are encapsulating all that and summarizing that in this one sentence here. Cognigy.AI is the conversational AI platform focused on the needs of large enterprises to develop, deploy, and run conversational AIs on any conversational channel. This whole enterprise thought is very important to us. We've completely shifted to an enterprise focus so that we can enable large enterprises in Germany, in Europe, and overseas to build conversational AIs. And for that, we have four main focus points that we concentrated on in this release. I'm going to talk about the first three, and then I'm going to show you in demos the last one, which is enterprise tools. The first one is enterprise scalability. What we are seeing in the market is that chatbots and voice bots and all these conversational AIs, they must be able to scale with consumer demand. That means maybe you have a chatbot for a TV show or something, and there's 5 people chatting at one moment, and there's 10,000 people chatting the next moment. That requires an enterprise class scalability, and we have achieved that by moving our platform into a new microservices architecture that can scale indefinitely. So whether you have 5 users chatting, 10,000 users chatting, or 10 million users chatting, the response rates will be exactly the same. The second is enterprise security. There's different types of security that we've taken into consideration here. Of course, we have things like encryption, authentication, but what's also very important is access security. So your company might be working on one or more projects, and not everyone in your company should have access to every project. And again, not everyone in a project should have access to every aspect of that project. Maybe someone should only edit flows. Maybe someone else should only edit lexicons. So what we've done is we've implemented a full hierarchical role-based access control mechanism to enable that in your conversational AI projects. The third one is integration. And that's one where we took a lot of market feedback, where we took a lot of feedback from our friends at Gartner Research, and where it's really all about nowadays an application doesn't just live on its own. Yeah, you must be able to integrate with other platforms. And there's different types of integration. There's, of course, integration with existing data sources. So you need to integrate from within your conversational AIs with databases or with HTTP endpoints. And we have put a lot of effort into that. I'm going to show that and made that a lot easier from within your conversational AIs. But then there's also integration with the channels that your users are coming through. That could be Alexa, that could be Messenger, that could be WEBCHAT, it could be Google Dialogflow or any other channel. And last but not least, there's also integration with existing enterprise systems that you already have. So those might be CRM systems, but those might also be parts of the conversational AI, like for example, natural language processing. So we've natively now enabled integration with Alexa Skills Kit, with Google Dialogflow, with Microsoft Lewis. So if your organization or your customer's organization is already using one of those, well, then you can use that component and use that in your conversational AI. And then last but not least, we have enterprise tools. A large part of Cognigy's staff is coming from the web content management and digital marketing world. And when we spoke to our customers, we felt that what they are missing are exactly these tools that you have in that world. You have profiles, you can personalize websites. So why can't you personalize conversations? And these are the kinds of things we took into consideration when we built Cognigy 3.0. I want to start with a couple of highlights. And the first one we're going to look at is contact profiles and personalization. So now in Cognigy, you can keep persistent information about your contacts across channels. You can use that information within flows to drive personalization. So you could, for example, say, okay, if the user is older than 30, then we say this. If they're younger than 30, we say that. Of course, now a question that might pop up for a lot of you is, what about GDPR? We just had that coming out on what's now called GDPR Day on last Friday. And yes, we do fully support that. We have included tools in the system where you can, of course, either completely turn off profiles, you can completely turn off data collection, you can export contact profiles one by one. So if a user requests that information from you or your customers, it can be exported. You can delete all the information and you can turn off data collection. And you can see we have that very prominently displayed here on the upper right on the contact profile. The second new thing we are introducing is conversational forms. This is a very novel concept, and we filed a patent for that as well. And what we're doing here is we're taking the concept of web forms to the conversational space. So a web form, you all use them probably daily, is requesting certain pieces of information from a user. And we're doing the same thing here. Sometimes it's called slot filling, but we're really taking this to the next level, where you can define a series of questions that the AI will then go through and request that information from a user, all in a completely non-technical way. So as you can see here on the right, you can define the fields, you can define the questions, they have certain types. And the nice thing is you don't have to answer them all in sequence. The questions you see here are actually the questions that I will be using in a demo to come, where it's about a travel booking, and you can see it says, okay, when will you arrive at the hotel? When will you depart? First name, last name, email, and so on. And what we can do is we can answer any of these questions in one go. I could say, I want to go to the hotel from tomorrow until next Monday. And then the first two questions are already answered, and it's only going to start with a third one, collecting the slots that are still missing. The third thing we got as feedback from the market is we need analytics directly within the tool. Previously, we had analytics connectors to tools like Power BI and Tableau, but now we have analytics also directly in the tool. You can see metrics on flow usage, how many messages did I receive, how many users did I have, things like that. But you're also getting information about what did the flows not understand directly within the tool, and you can use that to then optimize your AIs afterwards. We still, of course, allow the connection to external BI tools through OData, so that you can use the tools that you're already using or that your customers are using and integrate the data that you collect within Cognigy into those. Again, to stay compliant with GDPR, for the general analytics here, we are completely anonymizing the information. So even if you turn off profiles and if you turn off the collection of conversation records, then here we can still use the analytics information that we're getting in a completely anonymized way. The next concept is somewhat technical, but no less important, probably even more important, because what this allows you to do is it allows you to spawn so-called endpoints. Endpoints are endpoints that the channels your users come through talk to. So we would have Alexa, Messenger, Google Actions, or a number of other endpoints, and we are constantly expanding those. And the nice thing is that you can use this for deployment, meaning that, for example, if you're developing an Alexa skill, you could have two Alexa endpoints. One is your live endpoint, and your live skill that's in the Alexa store is linking to that one, and maybe that links to flow version 10. Now you keep developing your flow versions, and you have 11 and 12 and 13, and now you want your customer to test version 13. So what you do is you spawn another Alexa endpoint, you create a test Alexa skill in the portal, and you link that one to the latest version of that flow. So whenever you make changes, your customer can immediately test them. Say you come to an agreement on version 15, yes, this is fine, we want to push this live. All you need to do is you go into the endpoint configuration in Cognigy and you change the version from on the live endpoint to be version 15, and then that goes live. Last but not least, we have a new and improved user interface. We completely revamped the whole user interface, optimized it for performance, and streamlined it to make it easier for technical and non-technical users to create and edit flows. We have all the project resources now collected in projects overviews for maximum ease of use, and of course also security. And also nice, in the interaction panel, you can now chat with a flow from anywhere. You don't need to be within a flow. You can be inside a lexicon. You can be inside an endpoint. You can always chat with the flows. And that brings me to my first demo. So the demo we're going to look at is called Cognigy Travel. And it's a travel site to book hotels in Asia. And it is using a number of novel Cognigy concepts, such as profiles and such as conversational forms. And I have defined a form. I referred to this earlier. This form requests the arrival date, the departure date, the first name, last name, email, and the consent to receive specialty emails afterwards. So let's have a look at that. So what we have here, and let me just refresh this so we have a new user session. This is the Cognigy Travel web chat. This is completely configured from within Cognigy. You can change background images, you can change colors, you can change the way it behaves. It can sit here or it can sit on the lower right and you open it with a click and so on. So you can completely configure it from within here and then put it on your website or your customer's website. So let's go. We get kicked off with a welcome message. It says, welcome to Cognigy Travel Asia. We have the best hotels in the region. Where would you like to go, Tokyo or Bangkok? We can click on these buttons. We can write a reply, or we can use the persistent menu that we have here. And in this case, maybe we say, I want to go to Tokyo. It shows us a number of hotels in Tokyo, and we pick one that we want to go to. For example, the Park Hyatt. Park Hyatt is a great place in Tokyo. The average price per night is $543 US. Do you want to make a booking? So now we could just say yes or yeah or something like this, give a positive confirmation, and it would kick us into the form. But since we already know it's going to ask us for the arrival and departure date, we will say yes, I want to go from tomorrow until next Friday. So now it's skipping those first two questions and it's just starting with what's your first name. So my first name is Phil. My last name is Helzewig. My email address is p.helzewig@cognigy.com. And I want to receive specials in the future. Thanks, Phil. We booked your stay at the Park Hyatt Tokyo for 9 nights for you. Are you interested in seeing local activities? Let's say we don't want to do that right now. The next time I come back to this chat, because we're using profiles in this case, it will not start with the same message, but it will say, welcome, Phil, it's great to have you back. Are you looking for another hotel in Tokyo? This works across channels. So if I go to, for example, Facebook, and this is the Cognigy Travel Facebook page, and here we have the chat. On Facebook, we have previously made a booking. So we have already made a booking with my email address, so it knows who I am. So if I go in here and type hi, what I'm getting from Facebook is, welcome, Phil, great to have you back. Are you looking for another hotel in Tokyo? And actually, I want to go to Bangkok. So now we're getting hotels in Bangkok. I select one. And of course, this is this exact same Cognigy flow behind the scenes. So let's say in this case, we just say, yeah, I want to make the booking. Now it kicks us into the form. In this form, we said, if you can, autofill the dates. And if you can, take the first name and last name from the profile. So here we need to pick a date now, so we can use the date picker that we have built in, or I can just put a date like, for example, tomorrow. And then it gives me the departure date. So I say August 1st. And then what's your email address? As you can see, it's not asking me for first and last name because we have now already gotten that information through the profile. So I give it my email address, say, yes, I want to receive specials. And then here we receive the booking at the Mandarin Oriental for 63 nights in this case. Wouldn't that be nice? All right, so just to recap, what we've seen is we've seen how we can handle very complex flows with profiling, with personalization, with conversational forms. And of course, later in this demo, I'm going to show you how we have actually built that. So let's go a bit into the details of all the new stuff we've built. The first thing is the new user interface. So we have a completely new user interface that is streamlined, that we're using, exposing here to make it as easy as possible to create flows. We've made a lot of usability improvements, such as easier navigation, editing, and development, and I'm of course going to show this in a demo very soon. The main thing you're going to see if you're already used to Cognigy.AI is that we are now organizing everything in projects. These projects are security enabled, so you can now have all these different resources that belong to a project within a project, and we are securing them, meaning not everyone has access to every project. If we look at what a project looks like on the inside, you can see we are containing on the left side all the resources that you need to run the AI. Your flows, your lexicons, your endpoints, playbooks, NLP connectors, database connectors, or connections, forms, and so on. And we have detailed analytics directly on the projects page to see the project analytics, which flows are being used the most, and so on. Then we have the flow editor, which is of course the core component of Cognigy. We have a new flow editor that doesn't have flyouts anymore. So you remember previously we had these flyouts coming in from the right and left. Now we don't have that anymore. We have a new sidebar on the left that you can access all the flow properties through. We have inbuilt search, and of course we have real-time visitor analytics as well, which you can access through the button on the lower left on the sidebar. We do have a number of new and simpler nodes. So for example, for the yes/no questions, you can see that on the screen here. We now just have an on-yes flow and an on-no flow attached to those. So you don't have to fiddle around with intents and so on anymore to handle that, but you can really do it in a very easy way. Okay, if the user says yes, that's what we execute. If the user says no, we execute the other one. We also have enhanced say nodes. We have new once and interval nodes. So the say ones and so on, they fall away. We have generic once and interval nodes. And we have consolidated a lot of the other nodes like the database nodes and so on. We do have new COGNIGYSCRIPT. This is based on the feedback we got from the market. People didn't like writing COGNIGYSCRIPT like HTML tags. So now we have COGNIGYSCRIPT that just starts with curly brackets and ends with 2 curly brackets. We're exposing CI for input, CC for context, and CP for Cognigy profile. We are also exposing the moment library for date handling and the Lodash library for handling of strings, arrays, and so on. We've also integrated a new code editor. This new code editor is based on Visual Studio Code, and you have all the features in it that you have in Visual Studio Code. You have full IntelliSense for JavaScript, and you have full IntelliSense for all things Cognigy. So if you type actions dot, you're going to get all the actions that are available in Cognigy. If you make a mistake, like you can see up on the upper side, I said ci.channel is 1, but channel is actually a string property. So you will get a warning saying type 1 is not assignable to type string. So you do get full error handling directly within the browser, directly within the code nodes. Then we have the interaction panel. The interaction panel is the panel here on the right that allows you to talk to the flow. This is no longer a flyout, but it's always available. You can talk to the flows from within flows, from within lexicons, from within logs, from within everywhere. So it's always there, and you can choose the flow, you can choose the version, you can choose the NLP connector. Makes it a lot easier to debug and test, so you don't have to switch around so much. Here we can see a view, for example, of the interaction panel being used directly within a lexicon. So maybe previously Tokyo didn't work. Now I added Tokyo in the lexicon, and I can test it directly from within the lexicon editor. We also have a new feature in called misunderstoods. This shows you the sentences that users put in that weren't understood. It's sorted, of course, by the occurrences, how often was the sentence said, and if a sentence was not understood, you can add it to one of the existing intents as an example sentence. With that, I would like to go into a demo of the backend and of the things that I just showed you. So when we log in, you can see we're starting at the project overview page, and I currently have access to 2 projects. One is the travel project, and I've only imported this yesterday, so I'm not really getting the message stats yet. But if the project lives a little bit longer, then you can see we're actually getting a lot of project analytics directly on the projects page. On the left side here, we have all the resources that belong to a project. In this case, we have 4 flows. We have 2 lexicons, we have 3 endpoints, we have a database connection, and we have a form. Then we can go into a flow, just like we did before, by just clicking into it. And here we can see the travel flow that we looked at previously. So if I say, hi, then it says, hi, Phil, it's great to have you back. Are you looking for another hotel in Bangkok? Because I, of course, already have a profile. And we can see the information that we previously in the flow editor here. And we can also see the profile information. So this is the profile information we have stored about me in a usable format for the flow. So here we can chat, and here we can also see the different nodes. So for example, if I say Bangkok hotels, I pick a hotel, now it's going to ask me a yes/no question. So here we have the yes/no question, and then we have the on yes and on no parts. The yes/no question itself is really just a say node. And we have the defaults, we have Alexa, Facebook, Google, and WEBCHAT. So you can put anything you like in here now, just like you were able to put into a say node previously. Then if I say, for example, no, then okay, it executes this part here. And then now it jumped back into the flow and it executed this part down here. We have the same concept for forms. So if we finish the form, it executes this. If we abort a form, it does this. And you can chain them. As you can see, we have a yes/no question here. If we say yes, it executes the form. If we finish the form, it puts another yes/no question to us. So we can chain those together if we want. In the flow editor, we have the things just like we used to have, just in a bit of a different design. Here we have intents. For example, here we have a show specials intent. And then here we have a rule intent. So we have that. Attached flows, lexicons, and so on. Here we have statistics on the flow itself. And here we have the misunderstoods. So for example, I set Phil to the flow, which wasn't understood. I could make this an example sentence if I want, or I can copy it into a lexicon. In the project here, we then also have all these other resources, and we can create those resources by moving through any of those here. So I can create new flows and so on directly from within here. What else is new? We talked a little bit about endpoints already. And endpoints is a really, really important concept now within Cognigy. The way that endpoints work is that they take a message coming from a channel into Cognigy. And endpoints can be of different types. I wrote some of the types up here. There's more types. So we could have Facebook Messenger talking to a Messenger endpoint, and they use an NLP connector. So that could be Cognigy or Alexa, Dialogflow, Lewis, and they then talk to a flow. So what you can have is you can, if we look at an example, you could have Alexa using the Alexa endpoint, using Alexa NLP, talking to flow A. You could have Messenger using the Messenger endpoint, using Dialogflow NLP, talking to flow B. And the WEBCHAT using the WEBCHAT endpoint, using Cognigy NLP, also talking to flow B. So you become extremely flexible in how you set this up. You can say, okay, messages coming from Messenger are using Dialogflow to detect the intents and so on. Messages coming from WEBCHAT are using Cognigy. Or you could have both have used the Dialogflow, and then they both talk to the same flow. And I will show you how this works in a second directly within the tool. You configure them within the project, and you show directly where it should point to the flow and so on. So the endpoint links a flow to a channel, essentially. A flow can be triggered by any number of endpoints. So it's not like, okay, we're building a flow that can only be used from Alexa. No, you can use this flow from anywhere, from any number of endpoints. And of course, you're specifying the NLP connector, and by default, that's Cognigy. One of the best new things you will see here is the external web chat. So how can our customers test? And if we have a new chat, how can we get them to test it? Sure, we could set up, if we do a messenger project, for example, we could set up a new messenger page, but we can also just deploy a web chat now. The web chat has full Facebook compatibility. It's fully configurable through the UI, and I will show you this in the demo in a second as well. Database connections are now also configured project-wide. So if you want to use a database in your flow, you configure it directly within the project, and then you make it available to the flows. We have SQL and MongoDB available right now, and latency testing and error handling is directly built in. So let's have a look at that in the tool. So what I've built is I've built this test flow. This test flow currently says, hello, Cognigy 3.0. That is version 3 of this flow. Version 2 of this flow says, hello world. So what I've done is I've spawned a web chat endpoint, actually this one, and it has a name and it has a target flow, and it links to the latest version of the test flow. Say we don't want that. Say we wanted to link to version 2. We select the NLP connector. In this case, we only have Cognigy set up. We can make settings for data management. Do we want to use profiles? Do we want to collect analytics? If we want to collect analytics, do we also want to use Chatbase or Dashbot, which are the two leading flow analytics tools in the market? And what does our web chat look like? Is it centered? What color scheme do we use? Say maybe in this case, we want to use this kind of greenish color scheme. Placeholders and so on, background images, all kinds of stuff here that we can do. Do we want speech to text, text to speech, file upload, what entries are in the persistent menu, and so on. And then you can open it, and here we go. Now I say get started, and it says hello world. And it says hello world because I've hard linked it to version 2. If I now want to test and say, okay, I'm linking it to latest, it's now going to say hello Cognigy 3.0. And here comes the nice thing. While you're testing, if it's linked to latest, it's really always the latest. So if I go in and I change this to hello Cognigy 3.0, you look awesome. I don't need to make any change. I just go in here and now it says hello Cognigy 3.0, you look awesome. This works with web chats and any other endpoint. That means if you're testing an Alexa skill, you make one change in here, it is immediately available in your test Alexa skill. Then when your customer is ready, you could go and say, okay, this is maybe our live endpoint here. We're now not linking it to latest anymore, but version 16 is the version that has been approved. So we're linking it only to version 16. Database connections we have here. This is just a demo. We can test the connections. It gives us the latency. If we make mistakes, then it's not going to work any longer. Fail to connect. And then here, get the latency again. All right, we've already covered a lot of stuff. But of course, in the initial demo, you saw the contact profiles and so on. So maybe you want to see how those work within Cognigy. So we're collecting contact profiles. And what we are collecting is the profile information here on the right and the conversations that we had with this contact in the left. And this contact profile information is available to the flows. It's fully accessible within COGNIGYSCRIPT under the handle CP. So cp.firstname, cp.lastname. And it can be used for personalization and so on. And I've already talked about the GDPR compliance, and I'm going to show you that as well. If you look at a conversation, we have a full log of the conversation. If you delete a contact, then this conversation will be completely deleted from the system. So it will no longer exist, so that you can stay compliant as well. Forms, we already looked at briefly, are also configured directly within the project. They are the equivalent to web forms on websites. They take users through a series of predefined questions and tracks the answers. It can track against the conversation context or against the contact profile. Actually, it's and or. So you can immediately fill the contact profile from answers within the form. You can actually also fill the form from already existing pieces of information within the contact profile. And there's many different types available that I'm going to show you now. So let's start with the contact profiles. We can see the contact profiles here in the new contact profiles view. I've already searched, so we have a full search here. So we are searching for Helzewig, and here we can see my profile. This is the information we have collected. So my favorite city, for example, and receive specials. We have a number of base fields. So from everything from first name to location are base fields. They are always available. And then you can define so-called schema fields. And in this case, I've defined favorite city and receive specials. So you can define those yourself by adding them here, and then they will appear in the contact profiles. And then what I could do is I could export the contact, which is going to give me a full export of this contact to hand over to them if they want that for GDPR. You can also do this through the API, by the way. We do have a full API within Cognigy now. Everything you see in the UI can also be done through the API. I can delete the contact, then it's gone. I can turn data collection off for this contact, which will no longer collect any data in the future. And then here we can see, for example, this one was the conversation we had on the web chat at the beginning, where it says I want to go to Tokyo, and then we have a full transcript of the conversation here. Again, if I delete the contact, it will also delete all of those. And by the way, it will also turn the data collection off. The one thing it will not delete is the user IDs that this contact is associated with, because of course we need to keep the user IDs. If the user comes again in the future and data collection is turned off, we need to know, okay, did we turn off data collection for this user or not? And we then have the conversational forms. So here we have the booking form. We have a number of information here. The form inherits the language of the flow that is calling the form. So in this case, it's English because we did the travel booking flow in English. But if the travel booking flow is in German, then the form is also going to use German NLP. And of course, you need to change these messages to be in German. Users can jump out of a form by using a phrase that you define here. Messages can be skipped. You have calendar locales and so on, and you have a number of different field types. So here, for example, we have the when will you arrive at the hotel. It's a date time field. It has an ID and we have options. All of this is described in our documentation. It's a required field. We attempt dynamic filling, which means when I said earlier, yes, I want to go from tomorrow until next Friday or whatever I said, then we attempted to dynamically fill this, and we did not attempt pre-filling from profile values for this one. We did attempt pre-filling from profile values for the first name field though. So that's why we weren't asked about the first name in the second run through on Facebook. Very easy to create, just creating new form fields here. Very easy to sort. You can just sort them around like this. And then from within the flow, we are executing the form at a certain point. So this point is here. We have an execute form node. All you do here is you select the form you want to execute and you say, where do I want to store this in my context? So in the end, you get a result, and that result is in the context. Last but not least, we have the security tools. So we have full granular access rights within the system so that you can decide who of my coworkers, who in the organization can access what. And I can show you this here. We have the access control panel. This is my user. We have different users here in the system. And if we look at let's maybe create a new user. So we create the test user, and he is the tester at Cognigy.com. We assign a password. Must be 10 characters. It's very secure, as you can see. We create a new user. Here we have this user, and the user has only the basic access rights. So the user can only read things, projects, flows, and so on, can't create anything. Say this is a marketer, giving the marketer access rights. So now you can see, the user can also update flows and lexicons, cannot delete flows, cannot delete lexicons. The user cannot update endpoints because that's more of a developer thing. They can update forms, they can edit, create and delete basic nodes only inside a flow, not the advanced nodes, not code nodes, don't even have access to the code nodes. Want to give them more access rights? Maybe we give developer rights. Now all of a sudden you can see, we have a lot of access rights for this person, and you can assign projects that you have in the system here. So for example, I have demo and travel assigned. I could now also assign training copy to me. If I go back to my front page here, you can now see that all of a sudden I also have training copy. The nice thing is if you actually take access away from someone and they have bookmarked a flow or something like this, then they will not get access to that after you take the access rights away. So that much about the demos. And let's have a look at a summary. So we've shown you all the new things we've built. We hope you liked it. Please feel free to send any feedback you have. Cognigy.AI 3.0 is available in on-premise and SaaS, available as of today. Today is the last Cognigy.AI 2.7 training. So all the forthcoming trainings for Cognigy will be Cognigy.AI 3.0. And we have changed the training format so that now it's a 2-day training where we have half a day of user training. So that is quite non-technical, explains the concepts. How do I edit flows? What can I actually do with Cognigy? The second part of the first day is how do I edit flows? And the second day is really getting into the weeds with Cognigy. What can I do as a developer, right? So you're really going, it's hardcore coding. We're going to get pizza, full nerding out on Cognigy, using the API, all these kinds of things. That's the second day. Contact your Cognigy rep for a personalized demo today. So you can just come to the website or call them up, send them an email. We can give you a personalized demo. A lot of you guys might have already access to the Cognigy 2 demo. So we can give you Cognigy AI 3 demo access now. So contact anyone at Cognigy. If you have Konstantin's contact details already, please contact him. He will organize this. If not, feel free to contact anyone or just info@cognigy.com and we'll sort that out. And as a little teaser, we are going to release what we dub the Community Edition. The Community Edition will be a version that is free for personal use and educational use, so that anyone can use Cognigy to build Alexa skills, to build Facebook bots, to build any conversational AIs, as long as it's not for commercial usage. All right, and with that, I'd like to say thank you very much, and let's see if we have some questions. We do. 1 second. One of the questions is, can you maybe show how to connect Cognigy with an external user base? Of course, this would probably be a little bit too much for the demo here, but I can explain how you would do it. What you would do is you would place a so-called once node at the start of the flow. This is only executed once per session. So when a new session starts, this node is executed. Then you would connect against your external user base through either an HTTP call or a database call, retrieve the information, and then save that into the contact profile or into the context if you don't want to save it into the profile, and then use that information within your flow. So if you have information stored in a CRM system or in something like Sitecore Experience Database or Adobe Experience Manager, then you can take that information and use that directly from within Cognigy. Likewise, of course, you can push information back to those systems as well. I hope that answers the question. If not, then please send the question again via email, and we can connect, and then we can show you how we would do it. Here we have another question on pricing. So Cognigy pricing is staying unchanged, and the question is, are all the features included, or do we charge extra for any features? No, we don't charge extra for any features. The Cognigy pricing is still the same. The Cognigy pricing is a flat fee per month. So it's not per request or anything like that, because market feedback we gathered is that that makes it very difficult for a lot of customers to estimate what the cost will actually be. So we charge a flat fee per month, certain price on the SaaS and another price on on-premise. So if you want to know more about that, then please contact your rep directly with the project information, and then we'll get back to you with the price. Is there a free test version that partners can use? So what partners can do, partners can either get a demo account and then use the Cognigy demo version, but our partners also have the right, of course, to get a Cognigy installation on their own. So partners can contact us, get a Cognigy installation, install it on your own servers, and use that for testing, for development, and all these kinds of things. Of course, if you're developing for a customer, then the customer needs to have a license. But if you are just testing around and so on, then you can get a test version. Another one, how can our developers and team members get trained or certified? So I already talked a little bit about the training. Maybe this question was asked before I said that. So we do have Cognigy trainings scheduled. They are advertised. So what we're going to do is maybe we're going to post them again on our Facebook channel. So if you're not a member of our Facebook channel yet, please become a member. So we advertise our trainings there regularly, and then you can sign up for the trainings. The trainings are free. And as I said, it's a 2-day training. If you do want to do the second day, you have to do the first day, but you can also only do the first day if you want. There's some more questions. One is, when would the documentation be coming out? That's a good question. I should knock next door and ask the developers. The documentation is done. We're just putting the last bits and pieces in, which is specifically the API documentation. We haven't talked much about the API, but of course it's super powerful because now you can do everything you can do through the UI also through the API, because actually the UI is using that API. And we want to have good documentation for that. But in general, the documentation is available, and it will be latest available by this evening. And there's a question on internationalization. Do we need separate flows to maintain different languages, or can we do this from within a node? The general answer is that yes, you need 2 flows. And the reason for that is not so much that we couldn't tweak the outputs so that we could say within a say node, of course, we could include a little language drop down and say, sure, now answer this if it's in English, answer this if it's in German. The problem is more around the natural language processing and the lexicons, because in the different languages, you might have different lexicons. A German lexicon and an English lexicon will be very different. Of course, if you look at Japanese and so on, it becomes even more different. And in especially around intent mapping and so on, it didn't make sense for us to mix this all into one flow at the moment. It is a concept we're looking at for Cognigy. I think it's 3.2 though, and what we can do there to make that even easier. There's a question about is it possible to copy projects so you don't have to redo the whole work? Yes, and I can actually show how that will work. So what we have is we have a full import-export facility. So you can export anything from within a flow. Say I want to export my travel booking flow and I don't click anything else. We have full dependency checking and so on, telling you what is attached to this flow, what do we also need to export. Once we are done with our export, maybe I call this demo test. It is going to export this for me, and then now I have a zip file, and then equally I can go into a new project, for example, and I can import it. I can drag it in, and then it's going to import it. I'm not going to do that here now because I already have these flows in here. But yes, you do have full import-export facility. Another question, is it possible to connect Cognigy with BI tools and to make recommendations based on the clicks made in the BI tool? So I'm not sure I understand the second part, so I'm going to answer the first part. All the analytics information you have is also exposed through an OData connector. OData is a standard to get data out of systems into other systems. So yes, you can connect that, and then of course you can use your BI tool to then make recommendations based on that. The analytics are quite fine granular. They're actually going to a level where you can see which nodes have been triggered within a conversation, so that you can also say, okay, this part of the flow isn't really being used that much, and so on. Another question is, are more languages coming to Cognigy? That's an interesting question, because we do, in a way, already support all languages. So I'll show you this. When we create a flow, we now have these options. We have Danish, English, different types of English, German, Arabic, French, and Japanese. And actually, we have generic as well. Just there's no label for it. We should probably put a label in front of it. The languages that are not in beta support full Cognigy NLP. The languages that are in beta either use external NLP, like, for example, things like Alexa Skills Kit for Japanese and French, or they use our generic language. In the generic language, you have all the tools that you have in the other languages as well, except for machine learning based intent mapping. So you can build full flows in any language you want, may it be Korean, may it be Russian, may it be Klingon if you want. It doesn't have to be a real language. And you can use the generic connector for that. Through our NLP connectors, we also allow, of course, all the languages that these NLP connectors support. So I think for Dialogflow and Lewis is something like 15 different languages. We are, if market demand is there, we are going to introduce new languages as the market demands. So if we have projects in Spain, for example, we're starting to do a lot more in Spain, then our machine learning architects and data scientists are going to build models for those languages too. The other question was, is it possible to have a version control system like Git? We cannot have something like Git because the things, they live inside of Cognigy, of course, but you do have a version control system as in the versions that we have here for the different flows. And if you have a saved version, so a final version, so right now this is version 3 draft, and it says, hello Cognigy 3, you look awesome. If I save this version, I can put a commit message in, let's say final, and then now there's no draft, and if I change anything here again, if I say this, then this is actually going to create a new version for me. So this is now version 4 draft. So we do have full versioning inside the tool to make sure that you don't override the existing versions and so on, and you can see the commit messages here and so on. Which programming skills do you need to get started, basic or advanced? That really depends on what you want to do. So if you want to build an FAQ flow, if you want to build a funny facts flow, things like that, you really don't need programming skills, right? You can do everything from within Cognigy, and that's very easy. If you want to build super advanced flows that take information from databases, transform that information, and so on, then of course you might need programming knowledge. So something like the travel booking flow, which is quite dynamic in the way that it works, it is using things like code nodes, for example, to transform content and so on. So you would need JavaScript skills for that. So in general, we say that you don't need to be a programmer to build Cognigy flows. You just need to be an advanced super user like this. You need to be a very basic marketer to edit the flows. But if you want to build really advanced flows, then yes, you will need some programming knowledge. All right, and then the last question, will this webinar be available as a video later? The answer is yes. I actually believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I actually believe that the tool we're using, GoToWebinar, is going to send out the recording link to everyone. If not, then we are going to take care of that. So yeah, with that, again, thank you very much. My contact details are on the screen here. So if you'd like to contact me directly, you can do that using the email address on top. If you'd like to contact us in general, you have the address below, or of course, if you already know people here at Cognigy, please feel free to reach out. We'd love to get your to get your feedback. We'd love to get you to get your hands onto the tool to try it out and see what we can build together with Cognigy for your and your customers. Thank you very much.